Hey, what's going on around here? I'm Jeff Noedel.
I'm Heather Spaulding.
Hi, Heather. Nice
Hello.
to see you today.
Good to see you too.
And we stream this show live. The show is called Hey, What's Going On Around Here? We stream live every Tuesday at 11 a.m., about the same time that the Journal of the San Juan Islands, which you edit, you are editor, about the same time that hits the newsstands. And so for 30 to 45 minutes, we talk about just a few of the important articles in the new issue. And what an issue you've published this week. It's powerful. There is a lot there.
Thank you.
And people should make their way to King's, Post Office, Marketplace, Roche Harbor. It's not hard to get the paper. Somebody told me the other day, someone who's lived here a long time and is actually pretty involved in the community, that they didn't know that the paper is still published.
What?
How is that possible?
I don't know.
How is that possible? Well, it is still published on paper. You can still buy it if you like holding big pieces of paper up and reading like I do. And so get that one, get this one today, because this is an important issue that deals with some important subjects. So today we're going to be talking about the deadlocked jury in the federal trial of Dwight Henline, news that you broke Friday on the website. So there's both the website and the printed paper, and you can and will do breaking news on the website anytime, any day, right? Yep. Okay, so that you probably heard that first, either directly or indirectly from the Journal of San Juans. Secondly, we're going to talk about an important guest article, or I guess not a guest article, she's an intern, written by high school senior Maria Magano Navarro, about the role that COVID-19 measures played in education here. It's a powerful article, and we'll discuss that. And then thirdly, we're going to discuss a major piece that you wrote on the state of the retail community on San Juan Island. And the article took an interesting turn. And so that turn, the whole thing, but especially that interesting turn for the last third of the article, deserves some discussion. We're here sort of at beautiful Zylstra Lake. As you can tell, nothing is moving, so these are photographs. But in the background on the two-shot, Jeremy, is way over behind Heather. There are some swans. If you look really close, if you have a really big TV set. And the Preservation Trust counted 91 swans this year in the San Juans. More than half of all the swans that were counted in the county were counted at Zylstra Lake. So this is a picture. These are 3 pictures I took just this morning on the way in, and what a beautiful place. But first, I want to make a pitch for a new show on CNL2 that we're starting in just a few days. Been working on it for many months. I think it's going to be pretty important. And it's called Transit Plus AI, in which we will cover the Washington State ferries and all of their problems for every weekday that isn't a holiday. And it looks like we'll be doing that from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. We're looking for help in producing this crucially important show. We're taking volunteers, and we're even paying. So we have some paying positions. If you have skills on either side of the camera, please reach out to us today. We're going to use the power of television to press for solutions to these growing WSF problems. And quickly, while we're on the subject, this is an email that came out of Vashon Island just this morning. And it's interesting now. You've reported in the paper, I've reported that the work, and I've attended all 3 meetings of the Flow group here, Ferry Lovers of Washington. And there's a lot of energy there. It's a small group, but there's a lot of energy. And now there is a similar grassroots organization out of Vashon that seems to have been kind of spawned by the chamber. The chamber is the closest thing they have to municipal government on Vashon. And Vashon is calling their take on or their impact from the ferry problems a crisis. They say that the island is being strangled, or the economy is being strangled, and they've identified more than 50 action items to help, which is similar to what Flo has been doing, and is also very similar to what the letter from the San Juan County and town of Friday Harbor articulated. Was it 8 or 9 ideas as well? Mm-hmm. By the way, that letter continues to have legs. We have someone who had been this week and been in contact with someone at the governor's office who said that letter is right at the top, getting nice. A lot of attention. So good. Now there are two grassroots organizations by, not coincidentally, probably the two islands that don't have any other alternative to the ferries. So storm clouds brewing. It's probably not that, but it's or some of that. But it's also interesting to me that it's just this grassroots energy. It's like almost a little bit loss of faith in the bigger system solving these. So it's like, okay, well, here we go. I want to say one other thing on that subject, because I was in the last Flow meeting, and this was disappointing to me, but the interfaith group here has been offering to build a Red Cross style response to stranded passengers here. Mm-hmm. And it's no secret anymore that they have that was written into the letter to the governor and the state government. It has been covered in your paper. It's widely understood. It was discussed in a Zoom meeting that included WSF employees. And to this day, that idea now has been out in the public domain now for well over a month. Mm-hmm. To this day, they have not heard anything.
Oh my gosh.
Nothing. So you just wonder, despite all of this, you wonder if certain powerful people still, do they get it yet?
Right.
Do they get it? And I don't know. But I was kind of amazed and a little indignant that after all of the work and all of the offers, it is just a dull thud. I think the other problem could be just lack of accountability. Nobody owns this yet. According to the Seattle Times editorial board, the governor owns this, but a lot of people who could probably help make that action plan, that emergency response come together, just feel like, I guess somebody else will do that. So It's an interesting time, but
which I think is what actually we're going to have to do. I mean, that's something that we on this island can just do, and we should.
And I guess we will.
And we will. And this is what islanders do. This is what I love about this community, is that we are really pioneer people that are not afraid to take a challenge and solve it for ourselves in our own way.
As much as we can do. We can't build new ferry boats. There's a lot of things we can't do here that cost an awful lot of money and are very heavy lift. But yeah, I agree. I think, and she's pressing ahead. She's pressing ahead. I think it's just going to happen. Good. There was some discussion about, they called them in the meeting guerrilla signs, because she also wants signs up as to who or where you could call if you're stranded at the end of a day and the last sailing was canceled. And also no response there to just signs with phone numbers. And so there was discussion of guerrilla signs, which just appeared overnight. And it's like, you won't dare take that sign down, will you, if I put it up? So that's where we're at. It's something. So jury not unanimous in arson case is your headline. You want to talk about what we know happened last week?
So what we know happened is that the jury was unable to come up with a unanimous decision whether or not Dwight Henline was guilty of starting the fire in 2022, which was kind of shocking for a lot of people because we know that the prosecutor had a lot of evidence, had videotapes of him coming and going from the area, videotapes of him buying the lighter fluid, expert witnesses showing that the fire was started by a lighter fluid and why. But it sounds like there was a few different things going on, one of which was apparently the jury may not, or some of the jury may not have all bought that the fire smoldered for as long as it did, because supposedly I think he started it, or was allegedly started it at maybe around 10 o'clock. That's where the videos show him coming and going, and that's where it shows like the original poof of fire back there. But did it smolder for that whole time? Because the buildings didn't burn until like 3 in the morning. So there's that question in some jurors' head, apparently. There was potentially some technology issues where maybe the jury couldn't see the date of the videos or the timestamp of the videos. I'm not totally sure how that all fell out. But those are potentially some of the issues that may have happened. We are working on a bigger story that talks about all that. The prosecutor right now is trying to decide whether or not to retry the whole thing. So we'll see if that does happen. Then we're going to try to have a couple different articles, one that will cover the retried case and one that will cover the jury verdict in that case. If not, we'll still do, obviously, a bigger piece.
A long trial, right?
Mm-hmm.
How long was the trial?
I think it was 11 days.
Yeah. And is Mr. Henline still incarcerated?
He is. Yeah.
Okay. And the official status of the case is that it is not dismissed.
Right.
So there's still a case pending, I guess. Mm-hmm. But now the prosecutor has to decide to either refile for an entire second trial or drop it.
Right.
Right. And if it's dropped, then he's free. Okay. All right. And so you're working on a bigger piece. That'd be a few weeks, maybe?
Hopefully, probably a couple weeks.
Okay.
So
Great. All right. So secondly, there's a beautiful article by Maria Magana Navarro, beautifully written, I should say. It's and it's the local version of something that I'm sure played out in every school in the United States from 2020 to 2022. I just lost my sound. Maybe it's the headset. Am I still okay? Okay. I'm going to just keep talking. And Jeremy, you'll tell me if there's a problem. So anyway, this is a beautifully written story about, and it starts. I kind of think it was like flashing yellow lights on the dashboard. She talks about, she quotes extensively Daniel Garner, the English teacher at the high school, and Patty Turnbow, the math teacher at the high school. And they talk about the extreme challenges and really, I don't think suffering is too strong of a word for what the kids were going through in those 2 years. Then it ends on a hopeful note. But you want to talk a little bit about what they were going through?
Yeah, I mean, this definitely, to touch on what you said, it definitely occurred across the nation. And that's what sort of put some bells off in my head as I was reading different stories from different school teachers about how both literacy and math and science, students across the board, especially in middle school, actually, were really lagging, like 2-3 years behind. So there's that aspect of it. And I just wanted to have a local take on it. So I was so glad that Maria took it on and did what she did. I'm so proud of her for the article she wrote, because I thought it was really powerful too.
She's a good writer.
She is.
This is very well written.
Yeah. And just talking to some of her classmates and seeing what they had to say about it. And what they came out with was not just education, but the whole social struggles that they went through and emotionally what they went through. It was tough. Yeah.
From the article, due to losing trust, students lack confidence in their work and themselves, as communicated by Patty Turnbow. Hesitant to speak over Zoom. Those same students would have been uncomfortable enough to speak up if they were in a classroom setting. Talk about the lack of trust, which was an interesting kind of manifestation of this. Just the stress and anxiety stunted students in many forms, mentally, academically, socially. So this got pretty bad, and I also read that common consensus among students and teachers with the younger a student was, the more noticeable the effect. Mm-hmm. So the teachers, as well as the students, and I'm sure the families, have all been really struggling during this time. But it then the article becomes more hopeful.
Right, because the positive outcome of all this, or what they're seeing too, is that while kids are lagging, and while they went through this trauma and have these effects, that also what the teachers are seeing is that the kids are catching up quickly, that they are resilient, that we are going to be okay. The kids are going to be okay if we just keep on the right track, if we keep up the good teaching, keep up, the social stuff.
Maria writes, compassion and motivation are vital in helping students recover from the impending years of the pandemic. Things worsen before they improve. However, young minds are motivated to recover knowledge and experiences from their social, emotional, and academic lives. So
great?
I can't believe a high school student wrote this. It's a great article. We just gave you little snippets of it. There's a lot going on and a lot to learn. And it's really important that the entire community understand what the schools just got through and are still working through, what families went through, and particularly what these students went through. Yep. And this is, obviously going to follow them their entire lives. There's always going to be that 2-year block that was so incredibly difficult. And it's interesting to me, I'm not a person who's especially critical of the COVID measures. I remember how scary it was. I remember people dying all over the place. I knew people in Missouri that I had just heard they died from COVID. It was a scary time. And yet, not to take anything away from the decisions necessarily that were made, now we're seeing, as we kind of pull back and we're seeing more almost from a historical perspective, we're seeing the prices that were paid, whether it's the loss of almost a quarter of the Washington State Ferry staff, loss of state trooper levels that have never been regained, and impacts like this in schools. So it just means that COVID was maybe even bigger than we thought. And man, I hope it doesn't happen again anytime soon. And it makes you wonder too if things might be done a little differently. This was an enormous cost for these kids to pay.
But I think too, it's not necessarily an impact on or a statement on what the schools did. And yes, maybe if heaven forbid it happened again, we might do things a little differently. But I think that the schools did the best they could
Oh,
with
yeah.
what they had.
I do too. No, I do
And
too.
I think how amazing it is that we had the technology we did
Yeah.
to get through something like that. Because imagine lockdowns happening in the 1800s,
Right.
for example, if you couldn't leave your farm or whatever.
Total freezing
It would have
of
been
everything. And in this way, because of the technology,
right.
education still did continue. And her article also explains that some kids did fine. Some kids adjusted and were able to get through it.
Just fine.
So, and yeah, I'm not second guessing all of the things that had to be done. People were dying.
Yeah.
Many people were dying. Terrible deaths.
Enough
And
that it dropped our data point for our length of living.
yes, it did. Yeah.
So
I
it
remember.
was a big deal.
I remember when the vaccines still hadn't come out. And that we were in that scary zone where you knew you weren't protected, and yet you still had to go to the grocery store. You had to do these things. You heard of people getting infected that had been wearing masks. So we can't forget that. I mean, we can't just look at the postmortem and all this and look at these results without remembering how it was back at that time. It was very scary and very important. Speaking of COVID, you've identified it in your great article, about 500,000 words here.
It's huge. It was a bear. Right?
It's a big, giant. I don't know where it is. This is all Heather's article, taking a deep dive into the business closures, the empty office and retail space that you're seeing more and more of. Asking questions, looking into the origins. And this is a really good article. And you identified COVID, you identified the ferry service, you identified housing, affordable housing shortage, you even touched on the fire. And all of these contributed. And then about 2/3 of the way through, the article turned toward a subject that I don't hear a lot about, but I think it's a really important thing to discuss. And we'll get to that in a minute. But Denise Culsett, Chris Drain, Steve Buck, Jim Carroll, all bring different perspectives to this. There is a lot of discussion in the beginning of the article about affordable housing and the role of affordable housing and these COVID and all. And then Jim Carroll gets into a list of all of the new businesses or all of the businesses that are expanding. So CNL2 didn't make that list, unfortunately, but nobody knows what we're doing here yet. So I understand that. But it is a long list. I mean, it's like almost an entire column of businesses that are fighting the fight. They're optimistic. They're making the effort. So despite all of the empty spaces that we're seeing, and this always happens, in commerce and capitalism, there's always another group ready to move forward. The interesting turn that the article took was about landlords, commercial landlords, and prices, and whether the landlords are meeting entrepreneurs halfway. You want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. There are many landlords or I don't know if I should use the term many, but there are some landlords for sure that don't live on the island. And for some of them, they view this more as an investment and a way that they can make money. So what that does is it keeps some buildings empty because they make more money on tax breaks for keeping that empty than they do for actually having a business inside, which does nothing for this community.
Right.
So that is a struggle, and there have definitely been some people who have tried to open businesses that have found resistance to being able to open a business.
Well, I
So-
will bring my own personal perspective to this. I've been building a business here since February, and I have looked at space in different places, and I have met some very expensive prices, sometimes on less than perfect properties. And the phrase Seattle style or Seattle prices came up in your article. I don't think it was your word. I think you were quoting, but
Yeah.
I can validate that. And it doesn't help.
It does.
And I don't know who is expected to be paying this, unless maybe it's a newcomer who doesn't know what things might cost across the street.
Yeah.
But I have personally encountered what you're writing about in the last third of this article, and you boil it down to kind of a choice between making money or helping the community. Is that fair? For some.
For some. I think that there is probably a wide range of options in between there.
Well, you can do
But
both. You can do both.
You can do both, and I think we should strive to do both. But again, particularly for the building owners that do not live here, I think they need a wake-up call. I think that they may not understand that their rents are way too high.
Yeah.
They may not understand that many small businesses are making their money in, as Chris Strain put it, like within 100 days of the year.
Right.
That's they're raking
Right.
it in. And many of them may not be able to afford employees, and so they are working their butts off during that time period to rake in the money. They have to be open, as much as possible and sell as much as possible or whatever during that time period so that they can afford these high rents during the rest of the year.
There was a little discussion or mention in the article about incentives, government incentives that could be possible to try to incentivize building owners to make more inviting deals, more nurturing deals. I mean, that's how I look at it. As a commercial building owner, has the power, certainly has the power to do things that could nurture a business and help it be a success, or just be indifferent. Say, pay up,
Right.
and at that, pay up the steepest possible price. So. Is that being looked at by the town or the county?
The town is looking into it.
Yeah.
What Denise told me was that this is definitely something that we could do. There's a lot of places that have
Right.
laws like this.
This wouldn't be the first.
It wouldn't be the first. So she is doing her footwork to figure out what that might look like, because each place is different. What does that look like here? What works for us? Where does that money go? Where could that money go after we put these taxes in place, or fines or whatever, however this works. So she's doing her legwork, and she's going to do, when she comes up with the answers and figures a proposal out, she will bring it to council and then see. So.
Well, there is a lot of empty buildings here, a lot of empty commercial space, a lot of unused square footage. It's easy to see on almost every major road and street. And yet the article gives a long list of that kind of symbolizes the great energy that's here. So it seems like there might be a gap there that public policymakers can work on, because the energy is there. The capitalism is there. The entrepreneurs, the ambition is there. And then we have tons of empty space. So something's
So
out of whack.
there is a disconnect.
There is a disconnect. And so anyway, it's a great article, front page of today's paper. I forgot to take a commercial break, so we're both exhausted. This has been a 35-minute or 30-minute marathon, and there is a lot to talk about. So another great issue from Journal of the San Juan Islands, and we hope that you have a great Thanksgiving, and we have a lot to be thankful for, everybody who lives on this beautiful island. And we have a beautiful and still thriving business community too. And maybe 2024 will be a great year for entrepreneurship on the island. So we're not going to say who, but we may have a special guest next week. We hope, we think. So come back next Tuesday at 11-ish. We mean to start at 11, but we have never started at 11 yet.
Too late, though.
No. So thank you, and thank you, Heather. And we'll see you next week on Hey, what's going on around here? Bye.
Bye.